Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Black Teacher Project podcast. My name is Dr. Micia Mosely, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. I'm joined by my fellow Black teachers and leaders, JaVaughn Hardaway and Cecelia Gillam. Now, this space is created by and for Black educators, where we speak truth, share stories, and stay rooted in our purpose. Every episode, we gather in conversation to reflect, resist, and reimagine what it means to teach, lead, and thrive in schools and systems that were never built for us. So pull up, lean in, and let's get into it. So, y'all, thank you so much for being a yes in this. And yeah, just for being here. So let's start with a little background on y'all. Can y'all tell us your name, what you teach, what grade, subject matter, where you're located, and how long you've been in education?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is JaVaughn Hardaway. I am a community educator. I work with students in grades 4 and 5. I am also a literacy leader on my campus. I serve in an instructional coaching capacity, kindergarten through third grade. This is my ninth year in education, and I live and work in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Hi, I am Dr. Cecelia Gillam. I teach honors biology, AP environmental science at Benjamin Franklin High School in New Orleans, Louisiana. I have been teaching for this will be year 21 for me. Hard to believe that I'm already there, but here is where I am, and I am so grateful to be in this space as well.
I love it. We got the Midwest, we got the South. We in here. We in here. I love it. Well, one of the things that excites me about the journeys that you all have been on is that you are teach literacy and science, and we know that literacy and STEM are like hot content areas right now. Whether it's like standardized testing or just where we think about we want proficiency to be. So I'm curious as to, first of all, why teaching, and why teach that subject?
Yeah, so I it's so interesting because I like to say that teaching kind of chose me. As funny as that sounds, I came to teaching by way of Teach for America in 2017, and I think as you named, ELA is a tested subject. Middle school was a high needs grade. From there, I just kind of got bit by the bug, as you could say. My first year teaching, and just kind of never left. So my students, my first year just kind of left this mark on me, that really motivated me to want to continue to grow and perfect my craft and just continue to be the type of educator that they deserved. So that's what brought me to teaching. And that's kind of what has continued to sustain me in this work ever since. And coupled with that is my experience as a mother. So I have a daughter, she's 5. And so that's just added a whole new dimension to my work as an educator, becoming a parent and wanting to continue to just pour into our youth, pour into our young people, and help provide that type of educational experience that they deserve.
I'm a kind of piggyback off of what JaVaughn said. I feel like education found me because when I originally went to school, I started out as a mechanical engineer major, and I just found like, you know what? I didn't like building screws. So like that first year I had to do this intro to engineering class and we had to go on AutoCAD, build screws. And I was like, no, this cannot be my life. Then I was like, all right, I'm gonna switch over. I think I want to be an obstetrician gynecologist. And I was kind of like on that path, had all my little science classes, but then life happened. I got pregnant with my first son, and I had got to this point where I was like, look, I think I kind of just want to get out of school. And so at the time, my son's father, he was like, I think you would probably be a really good teacher and you got all of these science credits. So why not go and teach science? And that's really kind of how I fell into it. So it was like going into my senior year and I was like, you know what? You're right. I want to get out of school. So my first degree is in secondary education with a concentration in biology and general science. And so, I mean, I feel like this was the best path for me. Like now that I'm in it, I'm like, I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else, but that is really kind of what brought me and what has been sustaining me is that I've just found just this joy in watching kids get excited about STEM. So I always knew that I wanted to do something in the science field, at first just not
Mhm.
teaching because, where I'm from, nobody wants to outwardly say I'm going to school to be an educator because you're going to get down. Like, y'all remember when I graduated, like, why are you an educator? Like, why you didn't go do da-da-da? And I was like, okay, but this is where I was supposed to be led. So I'm fine.
Mhm.
And I've been doing very well in it since then. So that's me. That's how I got here.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, Cecelia, too, because in my household, it was like you're either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so I thought when I graduated undergrad, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer. So I go in and I'm like, oh, that's not really for me. I guess now being in my grad program, I guess I am going to be a doctor. So that that part of it did pan out. But yeah, I definitely resonate with that as well.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly glad that y'all made the choices that you did. And so tell us a little bit about like what it's like right now, when you think about this moment. So, one of the things that we really encourage folks to do in Black Teacher Project is to understand the legacy that we're a part of. So, education, Black education has a long legacy of excellence. And like you both are saying, I had the same experience. My mother's like, how are you going to buy me a house in the country on a teacher's salary? This is confusing, right? But y'all are in it right now. So, what is it like to teach, to focus on literacy, to focus on science? Again, these very specific, really highlighted subject areas. What does it mean to teach in this moment and really teach toward liberation in this political moment, this moment in history? Like, how was that experience for you all?
Oh, yes. I think to teach toward liberation and to teach literacy in this exact moment. This might sound funny, but it means to be a troublemaker. It means to
Mm,
understand as well. And I'll get into this, but I think right now more than ever, it means to understand what the difference is between a practice, a policy, and where I am, even a law. Um,
mm,
in the sense of there's a lot of things that are happening right now from curriculum mandates to folks saying what we can and can't teach, to this feeling of let me just go close my door and go teach, down to just a lot of pressure that is coming from systems. What I mean by understanding the difference between a practice, a policy, and a law is understanding that if something is a practice, it can be can and probably should be changed. So if this is something that we do in this building, that can be changed, especially if it's not
mhm,
written into any type of policy in terms of district policy.
mhm.
And if it's not written into law, that's something that we have some type of flexibility with. Coupled with that, I would say it's just extremely challenging right now. Community has been everything for me. Finding community with the people that are in my cohort. Though that is a group in my doctoral cohort that really just keep me sane and keep me going. Finding
Mhm.
community with other educators in my building.
So, because of course, in addition to teaching, you're getting a doctorate, you're in grad school.
Yes. So
Right.
I wear a couple
Okay.
of
This is the thing
hats.
with Black women. We can't just have a job. We're not going to do that. We're going to do, right? So, but the cohort of learners, that's also what I'm hearing is like there's a connection between being in a cohort of learners and teaching in this moment and them holding you down. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been everything for me, being in a community of learners, and then even having that accountability piece as well. They have been there for me every step of the way. This amazing group of Black women to say, hey, like, you're not all right. Like, you need to go ahead and
Mhm.
take a day, and we got you. So that has been huge for me. And then like also in this moment, like I felt this like pressure to do this work without humanity.
What say a little bit about what that means to you, like, or how that meant. What does that look like when you?
Yeah, so I'll name, I think similar to a lot of educators, one thing like in my landscape, I feel like I'm kind of jumping all over the place, is that standardized testing rules everything. So
Mhm.
it drives so much of just the conversations around teaching, the conversations around like what's best for kids, the conversations of just the entire school environment. And I think that when I say this pressure to do this work without humanity, I'm talking about if I come into your classroom, for example, and you're supposed to be teaching your phonics lesson and it's 9:35 and you are having a moment of connection, for example. I've experienced being in this space of like, that's not okay. Like, you have to hurry up. You have to be on this particular thing at this particular time. Or if so much attention being placed on implementing the curriculum with fidelity that conversations about connection and
Mm-hmm.
Black identity development, which is so important to me and which was really foundational to my project, get sidelined. And so, one of the things that I really would like to continue prioritizing, not just in my role as a community educator, but also as an instructional coach, is how I'm applying that lens to the work that I'm doing with teachers, and just kind of circling back to this idea of being a troublemaker is
Mm-hmm.
to call attention to, okay, yeah, we got this curriculum. Okay, we got this schedule, but how are we answering these important questions about who our students are, what they need to know to develop that criticality, that Black identity formation, and really contextualizing instruction,
Mm-hmm.
contextualizing. So connecting what we're teaching to what's happening in the world around us, but also in kids' worlds as well.
Mm-hmm.
You
Love
bring
that.
some very good points here, because the way I feel is exactly kind of how what you just said is that we have to be the troublemakers, the change makers, because we are charged with doing that. Because right now, because of the political climate that we are in, it is making a lot of teachers fearful. And kind of piggybacking off of what you said, I worked in a district where I had to be matter of fact, where they wanted everybody to be on the same page at the same time in the same way. But yet they would talk about, oh, we into, equity and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, but that's not equity. That's equality, but that's not equity. And that's not what like we should be doing, this one size fits all model, which I was talking to somebody about that, because I had to get myself out of that. I had to liberate myself and be like, I can no longer be a part of this system, because I'm looking at what it is doing to our Black and brown kids. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what? How dare you tell me as a professional, as the educator in the room, that I need to be doing this the exact same way? Because like I tell them, I don't teach the way she teaches or he teaches. We're all different. Our kids are all different. And so now I'm at a point in my educational career where I have made the decision. I have to serve the students that I teach. I get paid to serve the students that I teach, not the adults, the students. And so right now with STEM and where I'm at, well, I'm back up. Where I'm at right now, I have full autonomy. Like if I walk into my room and I say, this is the thing that I feel like my learners need to learn, my administration is not coming
Mm-hmm.
after me, and they're not mandating me to do anything other than to teach these children
Mm,
what I'm supposed to teach these children. And when I tell you that is such a breath of fresh air, it's a breath of fresh air, because I came from the micromanagement. I came from people coming in my room and saying,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you didn't put that in your lesson plan. So what do you mean you want to talk to them about the global water crisis? Is Sally down the hall talking about the global water? Like, what? Like, what if I
How can
just,
I teach science and not talk about the global water crisis?
yeah, that was the thing that was like confusing to me. And I'm like, what if at night a story pops up and I'm like, oh, that would be so good to, bring into my classroom today? Because again, my whole thing is about real world relevant pedagogy. So like,
right.
what am I, if I'm teaching you in isolation and you can't see the connection to what I'm teaching, see the connection in the curriculum, then like I tell my kids all the time, if we just doing things for the points, then what is the point? Because now we've lost the
Mm-hmm.
point. You supposed to be in here like to learn, retain this information. And so anyway, so right now I encourage educators to be, good disruptors of the status quo, because it is
Mm-hmm.
really easy to just say, I'll go in my room and, do what I want to do. But there are some people, like I said that to myself, but then they kept coming in my room. So I really couldn't just go in my room and close my door. I had to make that decision in a moment to be like, okay, I can't. This is not the system for me. And so that's kind of
I
where I'm
mean,
at around the world.
I love that, and one of the things that's so important to us in Black Teacher Project is the sense of community. So this notion of I'll just close my door and do my thing is part of that individual isolation. Even if what you're doing in there is good, it's just good for those people who are in there at that moment, and we are stronger together. So, it's important that we open the doors and we say, I think about why your administrators would trust you to do your own thing, right? So 21 years, not just tenure, but demonstration of excellence. Because this is what I tell folks. Many people can figure out how to hang around. Tenure doesn't necessarily mean talent. Tenure means I figured out how to hang around. And so how are you demonstrating that you actually know how to teach the young people in front of you? What does success actually look like, right? What's a fair way to measure that? And so I love this idea that you both mentioned around, the importance of being those disruptors and really responding to this moment that we're in. It feels very much like honoring teaching as an art form, right? Like this is an act of resistance, and not just having like progressive politics, but actually trying to get the next generation ready, right?
Absolutely. And I think on that note too, going back to teaching literacy in this moment, and around Cecilia's point about, teaching STEM and the global water crisis, I think it's, in addition to community, it's continuing to ask the question and to not be afraid to be the one in the room, to be, I guess you could say, that voice that is, asking that question and is really making people think. I'll share a story. At a recent training that I went to, one of our district leaders actually said, and I'll share it here because I feel safe with you all. One of our district leaders actually said, we're in a reading crisis. We don't need social studies. And so I just want to let those.
Now, this is where, so I began my teaching career as a social studies teacher. I want to be really clear. My credential is in social studies. If we had proper social studies, the nonsense that we see, I won't even say in Washington because it's everywhere. If we had civics, not just government class, but civics, we would see something different. I know this is not, I'm supposed to be asking the questions, but now you just struck a nerve with me, see? Because we're trying to keep this literacy in science. Now you done talked about social studies, so.
Well, and I talk about that because that is all a part of literacy. That's all a part of literacy. And so there is more than one literacy. So to teach literacy in this moment is to be expansive, is to not just say we're teaching phonemic awareness, we're teaching decoding, we're teaching vocabulary. Yes, we are teaching these things, but we're also teaching you the literacy of who you are, the literacy of how to function and how to move in this society. We're also teaching you the literacy of societal transformation and the development of criticality. All of that is a literacy. And so to teach literacy in this moment is to be expansive and to be that troublemaker and to resist those attempts to continue to narrow the curriculum, to continue to narrow those things.
Well, right now, I feel like it's a concerted effort to dumb down the citizenry. I just really feel like they don't want them to be literate. We talk about literacy because, like you said, it has to be expansive. Like right now, I literally had some parents fighting me on trying to teach their children AI literacy because AI was in front of the literacy. Oh my God. She's going to take their information and try to train AI. I'm like, no, all I'm trying to do is make sure that when they leave this school, they are AI literate because they need to understand that because we can't run away from it. But it seems like systems in play really, per se, think of literacy as reading. Like I tell my students, although I teach you science, you have to know how to engage in scientific argumentation. And I don't mean like going back and forth with somebody. I mean actually being able to state a claim, back that thing up with some evidence, and then provide me with the reasoning. And how do you do that? That's through your scientific literacy and like the approaches that I use in the classroom. Because as sad as it is, even though I teach 11th and 12th grade, if you allow them, they're going to give you stuff, one sentence, and I'm like, who's college? And then I got to tell them, even if you're not going to college, where you think you're about to go once you cross this threshold, doing this. And I'm like, y'all have to get prepared. But for whatever reason, somewhere along the line in education, lines are starting to become blurred. And then don't get me on like the lost art of handwriting. That's a whole nother like issue. Because I'm like, in my class,
we could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, you're about to get me going on that.
So it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, okay. So much of what we're talking about in many ways are adult issues. These are grown folks messing things up for the next generation. I'm curious, for those of us who don't spend the majority of our days in classrooms, what are you hearing from the young people? How are kids talking about science or talking about literacy, including some of the disruptor things that you all are promoting? So what are you hearing on the ground, if you will?
Yeah, so I'm hearing really on the ground, and that's one thing I love about kids is they are going to be honest with you. That I've had some kids just a couple of weeks ago. One of my students said, "Miss Hardaway, that lesson today, it was a little dry." I'm like, "Oh, thank you for your honesty. How can I, let me tweak some things." So that's one thing, they will be honest with you, and so that's one thing that I always love about teaching and working with students. I'm hearing a lot of just disengagement. Like literacy is something that is done to me instead of with me. I talked about the test guiding a lot of things. And so the kids can tell you, these are my test scores and this is what I'm aiming for. But beyond that, it's not that spark. It's not just that falling in love with learning and understanding more about who they are.
Yeah. And besides hearing 6, 7.
Right.
Look, you don't realize how much you say that, though. Actually, it's really crazy. Like how many times you say that and don't realize.
Right. They'll let you know.
What I've been hearing from my kids. So in my class, I like to say it's in their face, but not in their face. Like they don't realize that they're doing literacy in my classroom until I like point it out to them, because what we do in my class, like I said, I teach biology, I teach AP environmental. I make sure that I'm relating what I'm teaching to real world context so that they can see themselves or they could see somebody that they know. And like right now we're learning about sickle cell anemia and we're like a whole documentary. Like my kids could tell you right now that is a whole entire mutation. They could tell you where the mutation happened at, what type it is. But again, they didn't even realize they was learning because they was like, well, when you gonna get in front of the class and, stand up and teach us? And I'm like, I have been teaching you. You can sit here and you can tell me all of these things. And so what I'm hearing is like my kids love the way, like my class is different. Like I am just different. Like I tell them all the time, I dare to be different and I don't want to be inside of a box. And so we have to, as educators, start reinventing ourselves so that I don't walk in the classroom and say, okay, guys, today we're doing scientific literacy, because at that moment I kill them. I didn't take away that engagement. It's like scientific literacy. Like, what's that? But when I come in there and I'm doing things where you can now see, feel, and we're doing these hands-on things. And so that's what I'm hearing from my kids. Like they like the fact that they can come into my classroom, feel like they're not learning, but yet when they get to their assessment and then they get these great scores, I'm like, but remember, I didn't even stand in front of you all day and lecture at you, because I told them, I said, that's not how you learn. Because now my kids even quote, like I have this quote in my classroom where I say, tell me and I'll forget. Involve me, I might remember. No, it's tell me, I'll forget. Involve me, I might remember. And then if you show me, that's when I truly understand, or something like that.
Other way around. I'm guessing it's like show me, I might forget, because the involvement is what does it. Right?
Yes. That's what it is. Tell me, I might remember. Show me, and I might. Yes. You get what I'm saying. So, but anyway, but they can quote that. I don't know why I'm misquoting it, but they will quote that to me. I'm like, see, and that's what learning needs to be, and that's where I feel like we need to get like the kids back to, because my mission right now is joy in STEM. So I'm trying to figure out ways that I can bring joy back to STEM, because these kids, I don't know what we've done, but like when you brought up standardized tests, like I tell them, we're not even talking about, because you're more than a number, but we have made kids into numbers. Everything is about the numbers game. And I'm like, we got to stop that, because that's what's killing curiosity. That's what's killing like all the things that we need them to be doing.
Well, and one of the first things I taught in my social studies class was, education, schooling. First of all, the difference between education and schooling.
Right.
And schooling is this thing that was created based on capitalism. Workers, managers, owners. Those are your three tracks. Below grade level, on grade level, above grade level. I mean, it's very much about pushing you. What do you want to be when you grow up? Alive. Why do I have to define myself by labor at 12, 15, right? And so this notion that school is just to prepare you for labor puts that number on you, as you said. But bringing joy brings a humanity back. And it's interesting in a day and age where young people can manipulate technology better than most of us. Babies are breaking into people's passcodes. I can't tell you how many times. It don't matter what kind of passcode you have on the phone. They can't spell, but they can unlock your phone and play the game that they want. And so, how do we, to your point, and continue that curiosity and not slip into the old model of the banking model of I have the information to pour into you. Kids know that it's like, listen, I can get that information in 5 seconds. So
Yeah.
what are we doing here? We got to be doing something else here. So, what I'm hearing you all say is that there's a call for that. And they'll give you, JaVaughn, as you said, they'll give you that feedback if you're in
Yes,
that
they
kind of
will.
relationship. And one of the things I'm hearing you say, Cecelia, that I want for them is to know that that's how they should be learning and to demand that so that
Yeah.
you don't have to be the exception, right? Your difference doesn't have to be all the other classes are trash and then you're the exciting class. Your difference can be like, we're all exciting, we're all engaging, just in our different ways. So let me shift a little bit, and talk a bit about our beloved Black Teacher Project. So you both had an opportunity to be in our fellowship. Shout out to cohort 4, right? That's your cohort. And one of the things I love about that cohort is that, you all got to be with Black teachers all across the country, right? You've got Louisiana, you got Indiana, and you got to do this deep dive on your leadership project. Now, in this case, each of you decided to focus on subject matter, literacy and STEM in particular. Tell our audience a little bit about your experience with that project, what's come from that project since. Like, not everybody got to be in the fellowship with y'all, and you did get a choice of whatever you wanted to do. So, what was it? Where are you now? What do you remember?
Okay, so I guess I'll kick it off. One thing that I can definitely say that came as a result of being in a fellowship, because I talked about this pipeline between middle school and high school. And so actually, well, not this year, well, this in 2026 in March, I'm going to be doing a STEM day at my school. And that just is a part of that vision of like keeping it going where I'm developing this pipeline where high schoolers are kind of like the mentors to the middle schoolers. And so just doing that kind of like empowered me to feel like, okay, I can do this thing in partnership and actually, getting community partners on and getting different various clubs involved. And so I definitely credit the experience that I went through with the cohort and understanding like my leadership and also just understanding within that me stepping back and kind of allowing other people to like play a role. Like I don't have to be like the whole thing. Like it literally is me and a bunch of people coming together to like co-create this thing, develop it. And so it just feels really good. Because again, like I said, this all kind of sparked from the fellowship, like that notion of joy in STEM and like what can I do to like bring that joy back, bring that curiosity, igniting that curiosity. And so definitely being a part of the cohort has helped me. And I'm still in touch with my cohort mate. Even though she's in another state now, we are still connected. We still talk about the things. And hopefully she can come to see the STEM day when we have it down in New Orleans.
Love it.
Yeah, that's great. So I would say for me, the experience of Black Teacher Project really changed me. Cecelia, you talked about this notion of empowerment, and I think before the fellowship, I was in a space of really just like honestly being an early career teacher. It was hitting me really hard, not knowing about the thriving framework that we learned so much about and that we practiced, and just that space of community coming together every single month and getting close with the people in our cohort and the meetups that we did. All of those things really just had a big impact on me and took me from this space of kind of just surviving to this closer to a place of thriving. Now, I'll say sometimes I'm a little bit hard headed and need those reminders.
Mhm.
I would say what's come of it since, kind of as we've alluded to on this call, education is under attack. That reality rings especially true where I am. So, with that, the school that I was at the time completely turned over. And so I, you know, in that space of just creating those spaces for liberated literacy and different things and continuing that work in my new school is something that I am looking forward to continuing on. So just
Can you tell us a little bit about that project? Like, what did you do in that
yeah,
liberated
yeah.
literacy project?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Liberated Literacy Project, I really focused on connection, authenticity, vulnerability, and good teaching. So what I did was I advocated for authentic literacy experiences for students with a focus area of quality instruction rooted in Blackness. And so what that meant was having focused listening sessions with my students, hearing about what their interests were, what types of literacy experiences they were looking to have. I applied for a grant through a local education nonprofit. And what I did was I supplemented the curriculum in my classroom with authentic literature that built students' Black identity development and complemented the curriculum.
Mhm.
So we did things like community field trips. I took stories from students where they reflected on what they learned throughout the process. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about my project.
Thank you. I asked because you both talk about, I mean, Cecilia, you're explicit about talking about joy, but it seems like you both are taking these areas, these content areas of literacy and science. And I'm going to say science specifically because we like to say STEM. And when I start talking to teachers who teach engineering, the very few folks I know, they're like, people say STEM because they're not in our fields. Like an engineering teacher is often up to something different than a biology teacher or a physics teacher. But when I think about in this conversation of literacy and science, and in both cases through your fellowship project, but beyond that, y'all are trying to infuse joy. Y'all are really trying to make sure that students are engaged. How do you balance a standards based curriculum, not necessarily a pacing guide? Like, we've already talked a little bit about the dramatics of people trying to be all up under you minute by minute. But I would assert that standards are important. And so sometimes, it's like we go to extremes because we don't want the like over zealous pacing guide. Sometimes people like don't pay attention to standards and they just teach what they think kids should know or what they're excited about. And then there's some like core content that folks don't understand. So how do y'all strike that balance between standards based, rigorous curriculum and joyful, engaging pedagogy? Like they got to learn this. I'm like, I'm happy if Jamal can fight the power, but if you haven't taught him how to read, we have a problem,
Well,
right? If the children don't have math, what do we, it's how many times can you map from the school to the corner store on a graph? How many grades are we going to do that particular project?
for me, I do mastery based learning. But inside of mastery based learning, I do have my content standards. So in Louisiana, we have adopted the next generation science standards, which we call them the Louisiana State Science Standards, but they really just stole it from them. So anyway, I digress. So the way the way that my class is set up is based on it's really the modern classroom project pedagogy, where I do what's called so we do self-pacing, and inside of this we have these what's called must do's, should do's, aspire to do's. But the kids have to meet mastery. Like they can't go on to the next lesson without first meeting mastery. So like if a kid doesn't so in my class, mastery is set at 80%. Because like I tell them, everybody is not going to get an A, and that is A-okay. Because that's this lesson. But if they score underneath the 80%, they come back and they have to retake it. Like they have to go back through the lesson. Now, what I will say to make that make sense is that in my classroom, I create videos for the kids. Like, so they're like these video lessons, these hands-on things, so that if they fall short, they can go back, rewatch those things, relearn a lesson, or they can schedule a one-to-one with me. So that, because again, everything for me is like what you just said. You should not be able to leave my class and not understand like the cell cycle, not understand like what is a mutation, inheritance of traits, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And so with mastery based learning is like these kids have to master these concepts. So I go through and I look at like what's the essential knowledge that you must learn, because like you said, a lot of teachers are used to teaching what they want, teaching what they love. Because there are some things that I have to teach, like, that I don't necessarily love, but I know that it's for the greater good of the kids that's in my classroom. But so initially when kids first come in my classroom, they like, wait, what is this? Wait, you mean I get to retake a test and you're gonna get the highest score? Because I said, y'all, we're not about to sit in here and average out what's the highest and this and that. And if you come back in here and you show me that you've acquired this additional knowledge or you learned the material, you get the higher score. So I read the book Grading for Equity, and I actually got to meet him when I was at the Fulbright Full Scale Conference. Not Fulbright, Full Scale Conference Symposium. So anyway, I used that also in my classroom as well, because that really helped me. Because at first, when I first started teaching, I was like every other teacher. Okay, you come back and take the test. We're going to give you an average between the two. Or, well, you failed it. Sorry, better luck next time. I'm like, then I started thinking about it. Like, why are we doing this to kids in education? This is why they hate school.
Mm-hmm.
This is why. Mm-hmm. Like I said, in my classroom, baby, if you willing to come in during lunch or after school to retake this and relearn this, I'm there for you. You get the points. And so that's really how I maintain that balance. And then I'm just going to say this, and science lends itself to being able to, like, my class is real well relevant. I teach based on phenomenon. And so we take something real. So like right now in my classroom, we are discussing ethical considerations for should we as humans be allowed to go in and edit genes? Like, let's just say I want a designer baby, where I say, I go in there, I want a son, I want him to be 6 foot, I want him to be athletic, and I'm like, should we be able to do this? Because right now the technology is there. And so, getting them, and that's how I get them involved. And that's how I still cover my standards, still make it relevant, and keep them engaged and like, tell me more. Oh, I want to know more. We're gearing up for a whole debate on this, and they ready. They coming with it. So,
I love it. I love it. I just shout out earlier, JaVaughn, you talked about thriving. Shout out to Dr. Kia Darling Hammond for her thriving framework. And shout out to Joe Feldman, Grading for Equity. These are two folks who have been longtime supporters of the Black Teacher Project. And so happy that, that we're able, naturally, y'all just mentioned their work, but it just means a lot to think about that. Yeah. So JaVaughn, what's your experience with that finding that balance?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, Cecelia, I would love to be a student in your class. That sounds so interesting. Wow. Now, I would definitely agree. And something that really resonated with me was just this idea of relevance, something that I'm very big on in my classroom and just anytime that I'm working with students, in a teaching capacity, is that presenting kids with authentic texts and learning opportunities. So project-based learning and problem-based learning are just two ways that I do that work. So what that looks like is, Cecelia, you talked about it, striking this balance between direct and explicit instruction, but then inquiry-based learning. And so kids' questions drive the curriculum, drive what we're studying, those authentic texts and experiences drive what we're learning. And then within that, we are doing that explicit instruction. So one specific example I'll give is some kindergarten babies that I work with. I love them to death. We are working on our phonemic awareness. And so, yes, we do have a curriculum that really lays out like what the phonemic awareness like routine is. But one thing that we did at my school is that we also input like a vocabulary routine for one of the words. We also introduced some cognates in Spanish and Haitian Creole for our babies to connect their language, connect and infuse that aspect they are into what we're teaching. And it was actually really powerful because we saw some great gains with our students. So Dr. Mosely, going back to that point about, yes, we want our students to have this, Black identity development and to understand and have this critical orientation. And at the end of the day, we need these babies to be able to read. And so one way that we're continuing to to work through that is to think about, Cecelia, going back to what you said, is kind of just taking the box and kicking it and thinking more expansively beyond that. So yes, I have this resource. I have this curriculum here, but that doesn't mean that I have to say I have to move in lockstep with that particular resource or program. So we're looking to folks like Dr. Cardenas Hagen and her work about educating and working with multilingual learners. We're looking to works like Dr. Joyce King and Black Education and Transformation, right? And we're looking to see, like, let's workshop this. Like, what does it actually look like to be able to do all of those things and to engage our students in a way that honors who they are and what they bring, so that we're not doing this like banking model, but we're actually, we are being standards based and we're doing the things, but we're also honoring who the kids are, what they bring, and then we're giving them this holistic experience that's contextualized as well.
I mean, y'all answered the next question I have for you, I think. So I'll just ask if you have anything to add to what you see that Black teachers need to do in their practice right now to be interrupters, and particularly in their pedagogical practice. So if we start with the assumption that school is about only preparing people for labor and it's meant to divide us based on somebody's assumption about what we're capable of, and it's rooted in inequity, right? So let's just assume these facts are in evidence. As Black teachers, we need, as teachers, period, but certainly as Black teachers, we need to be interrupters. What are the things that y'all see that Black teachers need to be doing right now to be those interrupters? Like, what in their instructional practice needs to happen? You've named a bunch of things. I just want to create space in case y'all have other things that come to mind.
Well, one thing that comes to my mind when I think about that question is that as Black educators, especially, we need to not be afraid, because a long time I lived in fear. Like, I suppressed who I was because, I wanted to conform and do the things that they wanted me to do. And so what I tell teachers now is, you have to be you. They will adjust. You, like, don't shrink who you are to fit inside of their space. And especially because we are charged with educating the future. And then you're in the room with them. You know what they need. Stand up for their rights. Stand up for what they need and be that voice. Don't allow somebody, because for so long I just was like, okay, I'll just do whatever they tell me to do. Because that was really how I was raised, though. Some of that was how I was raised. Like, somebody tell you to do something and they're in authority, you have to do it. But now I tell people, you got to interrupt those systems, those patterns, because at the end of the day, that does no good for anyone. Not the teacher, not the students, not our future. Because again, these are the people who got to take care of us. And so my one message to those educators is, don't be afraid to disrupt the system. Don't be afraid to walk away from a system that you know is not serving you, because you can still do the work to disrupt that system, but doesn't mean you have to be a part of that system. And I learned that when I walked away from a system, and I came back and I said, but guess what? I'm still doing the work to disrupt what they were doing so that I can make things better for other educators as well. So main message is, don't be afraid, be yourself, be you, they'll adjust.
No, I think that's such a really important question. And I think too, like, it kind of goes back to, I think Cecilia's right. And I also think it goes back to just the point that I said earlier about, actually, even before I say that, I would say, first and foremost, like, taking care of yourself. That was one thing that I learned in the fellowship, is that if you are not right and you are not well and you are not whole, then how, that goes back to like what you're putting out into the world, and then how are you showing up for your students as a Black teacher. So I think that part first. I would also say too, like, and I said this earlier as well, but going back and really understanding, you know, at least where I am, because the laws are changing every day, unfortunately. Understanding what is a law, what is a rule, and what is a practice, because that lets you know kind of how to move, if that makes sense. And so something that is a practice, let's going back to what you said, Cecelia, like, those things can and probably should be interrupted and disrupted and questioned, and even the law too, to some extent. Rules as well should also be, I guess you could say, questioned as well. And then for Black teachers in this moment, like, know and perfect your craft. And so what I mean by that is like basically like know your content, know your students, continue to get more and more excellent every single day, reflect on your teaching, reflect on your practice, really examine like, are all of the students in my class being served well? And if not, how can I continue to trouble what I'm doing so that all of my students are being served excellently? I would say continue to put, like, we've touched on this several times, like things that are relevant and contextualized and rich and full, like in front of kids, as opposed to like reduced. And I don't even know how to say, basically things that are just like maybe narrowed or geared to a test, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Making it like relevant and useful. I often joke that I was prepared to teach prior to the internet. And Cecilia, when you're talking about AI, it's similar, right? We see these technological advances and how we relate things for young people, but also how we prepare them with skills that go beyond technology. Criticality, that's just, it doesn't matter what era you're living in. That's important. So speaking of that, I'll ask this last question where we are in this historical moment. We are where we are right now. We know that. We also know that there's this notion that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? We are the manifestation of someone else's dream. So it's important for us to dream so that we're not just responding to the moment. We do want to make things relevant to this moment, but we're preparing kids for a world that doesn't exist yet. So we've got to be dreaming beyond this. And Robin D.G. Kelly talks about freedom dreams, right? He's often credited with this notion and this idea of this very radical act of using our collective imagination to dream beyond oppression. Like, how do we dream beyond this fight that we're in? And freedom dreaming is important because otherwise our dreams will just be about getting out of this moment. But how do we dream beyond this concept and this experience of oppression? So when you think about your freedom dreams, what are your freedom dreams for literacy? What are your freedom dreams for science?
So my freedom dream is that we create this world where kids can really come in and we take this stigma away of like just points, because that's where I'm at now because like I tell kids, a grade doesn't define you. The point value behind it does not define you. What you have learned and the experiences that you have is what truly defines you. And so my dream for the future is that like kids could just come in and they can feel like they can learn without all of these extra pressures. Because like right now it's the pressures. It's like, oh my God, if I don't get an A, my mom or my dad, they're gonna kill me. And I'm like, why? Did you give that your all? Was that your best work? That really needs to be like the conversation. And if it wasn't, then how can we go back and fix it so that it can be more representative of you? So that's like my dream for education, is that we get away from that banking system of like the points and a this and a that. And, we just come in to learn and grow and fellowship and, get better for society.
So this question, I just love this question because it reminds me, and in this exact moment, I'm like, okay, I'm the type of person where I get so wrapped up in the day to day, and I think what needs to happen from moment to moment, that this question is like an opportunity to step back and think about, Dr. Mosely, like you said, in our highest hopes or our wildest dreams for students. Like, what would we want to see? And I think, Cecelia, I would agree with you. I would also add like just a recognition of this idea of multiple literacies. So not just decoding and comprehension and the technical aspects of literacy and reading and writing, but also kids who are knowledgeable about the world themselves. And then they're also ready to take up this work of societal transformation. But as I think about that, in my wildest freedom dream, there wouldn't be a need for that. Kids could just, going back to like this idea of just being, I think, just to build on that, like that would be a reality. I would say all kids, but especially Black children in elementary schools have access to that robust science and social studies and art instruction. So just going back to all the things that we've talked about tonight of kids just having this like holistic experience of learning that isn't limited, and kids just not being limited and their futures not being limited. So them being able to pursue not being basically them not being limited by labor or them not being limited by just what's available to them, but them actually being able to pursue and achieve their natural, like God-given talents and abilities, and not being limited by just a limited curriculum and a limited scope where they're saying, okay, well, this is what I've been exposed to. So we know that if kids don't see something, it's very hard to be something that you never even saw in the first place. So taking away that limitation. And then not my last point. My second to last point is basically like Black children having teachers that have an awareness of, and actually beyond an awareness of, I would say a commitment to love and justice for all of their students, but particularly their Black students. So kids having teachers that have this commitment. And then this actually is my last point. Basically, we talked about it a little bit tonight, but those curriculum companies, people that are seeking to privatize education, people who are looking to make a profit off of schools, children, caregivers, communities. Basically, those folks in education are decentered, but instead we focus on some of those other really wonderful elements that we talked about tonight. So those folks that I just named off and those entities having less of a role within education.
Right on. Right on. Ooh, y'all done told it and told it well. So thank you, Dr. Cecelia Gillam, serving students in New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you, soon to be Dr. JaVaughn Hardaway, serving students in Indianapolis, Indiana. Social studies teacher. I know my maps. But I really appreciate y'all taking the time. We're building this Black educator community, y'all. We're building it. And so coast to coast and everywhere in between. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on the Black Teacher Project podcast. We hope today's conversation has fed your spirit, affirmed your journey, and reminded you that you are not alone. We are right here. You can stay in the loop with the Black Teacher Project for resources, gatherings, and ways to build alongside others who are committed to creating communities of liberated learning for all students. You can find us at www.blackteacherproject.org. Follow us on all the things: Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Threads at Black Teacher Project. Until next time, take care of yourself and your people. Thank you so much.